Good evening. I'll call the meeting to order. Just for your information, we had a study session earlier this evening where we talked about our long-term facilities plan. But welcome to the Pasco School District Board of Directors regular board meeting. We'll begin tonight with a flag salute, and we've asked our student representatives if they could lead us in that. Cassidy.
Please stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. So, Ms. Richardson, could we get a roll call, please? Present?
Present.
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 Present. Present. Present.
All right, thank you. So could we, agenda review?
So we do have a couple of changes based on this being a reschedule of our meeting that was canceled due to weather last week. You'll notice that we have stricken the special recognition for school counselors. It'll be rescheduled for the regular scheduled board meeting, which would be next week. And then I also wanted to call your attention to consent agenda L. That resolution, the title was changed to indicate middle school number 4. We also will be requesting an executive session this evening under 4231.10.1G for personnel-related items.
Okay, very good. So, excuse me. With that, looks like we're at the audience comments portion of our meeting. So here's how we do this. We invite you that has anything to share with the school board to come up to the podium. If you would please state your name and your affiliation with the district, that would be great. We'll allow you 2 minutes. And just for your information, so if you look further down on the agenda tonight, we've got a couple of other items that we will be talking about. Three Rivers Elementary School boundaries, and then playground report and a bus lease program. If you're addressing those things in particular, we will allow you to speak when we're talking about those items. So if you're talking about any of those things, it's probably best if you wait until that part of our meeting. So having said that, is there anybody that wants to come and speak to us at this point?
Good evening, Board President Christensen, Vice President Phillips, Superintendent Whitney, members of the board. My name is Nathan Grimm, community member, taxpayer, first week in March, new parent. I just wanted to talk a little bit. I had an opportunity to attend the study session about long-term facilities planning and heard your guys' discussion. And I had made a suggestion that I think was maybe misunderstood a little bit. And my point was that there are 3 dials you can turn to adjust the output. And I was just pointing you to the 3rd dial. Also, I think we don't need just one document. I think it would be a mistake to produce a document that showed what would be on a bond past the first bond. Because then you'd have people back in here saying, well, you said this was going to be the next bond. I think this long-term facilities process, in my opinion, has always been 2 documents. A long-term plan and strategy that addresses the challenges, and your short-term capital facilities plan that addresses your bonds. So, I think you ought to take that into consideration as you communicate with staff proceeding on a long-term plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Grimm. Anybody else wanting to address the board at this point?
President Christensen, if I may, I wanted to point out to the school board, I have this amazing stack of student-made posters, cards, obsessively grateful little notes from Livingston students, and they were given to me in advance of the board meeting. So I wanted to call your attention to these over here, and please, after the board meeting, come take a look. I kind of thumbed through the little notes. They say, be obsessively grateful, and they list all of the reasons why students are grateful to be at Livingston Elementary. Probably the best thing I've seen all day right here. So,
Okay, thank you, Superintendent Whitney. All right, final call for anybody wanting to speak at this point. All right, very good. Moving on, could we get a motion for approval of the minutes of our previous meeting?
Mr. President, I move to approve the meeting minutes of the board meeting of January 22nd, 2019.
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of our regular meeting of January 22nd, 2019. Those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries, minutes are approved. Consent agenda. So we've got personnel, we've got warrants, Three Rivers Elementary construction change order number 1. Out-of-state travel for 6th grade Maya Angelou students to participate in Science Day at Silverwood at Atoll, Idaho. Out-of-state student travel for Ochoa Middle School Jazz Choir to participate in the Lionel Hampton Jazz Festival in Moscow, Idaho. Overnight travel for Pasco High School FFA students to attend the Emerge Leadership Conference in Wenatchee, Washington. Overnight travel for Pasco High School DECA students to participate in the DECA State Conference in Bellevue, Washington. Overnight student travel for Chiawana High School FCCLA Club to attend the State Leadership Conference in Wenatchee, Washington. Overnight student travel for Chiawana High School FCCLA student leaders to attend the State Leadership Pre-Conference in Wenatchee, Washington. Overnight travel for Chiawana High School DECA students to participate in the DECA State Conference in Bellevue, Washington. Overnight travel for McLaughlin Middle School FCCLA students to participate in the FCCLA State Leadership Conference in Wenatchee, Washington. Resolution number 970, Middle School number 4, Constructability Recommendations. Resolution 971, Final Acceptance of 2018 Portables Project. And finally, overnight travel for New Horizons High School FFA students to attend the Emerge Leadership Conference in Wenatchee, Washington. That is the extent of our consent agenda. Could I get a motion, please?
Mr. President, I move that we approve the consent agenda as amended.
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda as amended. Could we get a roll call, please?
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Lincoln?
Yes.
Mr. Leonard?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
All right, the consent agenda is approved. Moving on to number 9, action items, Three Rivers Elementary School boundary recommendation. You want to introduce this?
So it's my pleasure to invite Dr. Reyes to the podium to present for board action tonight the recommendation for Three Rivers Elementary School boundaries. Just a reminder that this is kind of the first in a series of action items that will be in front of the board. Obviously, the first is Three Rivers Elementary boundaries. You'll be seeing Columbia River Elementary boundaries come to you within the next handful of board meetings, and then the culmination of this series of 3 focused on boundaries will be middle school boundaries that will come to you later this spring. So this is a first in the series of 3.
Thank you. Good evening, President Christensen, members of the board, and Superintendent Whitney. This evening's report is an action item regarding the boundaries for Three Rivers Elementary. Before I begin, I'd like to acknowledge several of our committee members who are here this evening and would like to express just extreme gratitude for all of the work, the time, the commitment to the conversations that have taken place regarding Three Rivers Elementary and the ongoing work that I know is still ahead of us. But I'd like to acknowledge Mr. Nathan Grimm, who is in the audience this evening, and Christy Grimm, and Heather Kubalik, Kristen Wren, and then we have Robin Hay, and we have Mark Garrett, Randy Nunemaker, Steve Story, who's also here. And then we also have in the audience with us this evening, Mr. Spencer Montgomery, who's the project manager for JUB Engineers Incorporated, and they've been working with us through every step of the way, actually. So it's been a great process, and again, just want to express our gratitude for all of that effort and time that has been given to this.
Can we have all of those
project.
committee members? We haven't had that many committee members yet. I don't know if it's appropriate, but I would love to, I didn't even see hands raised, so if you could stand up, I would love to see you. Is that appropriate?
Of course.
Okay, if you could stand up, we would love to express our thanks to all of you.
Thank you. So just to begin with, guiding principles, these are the principles that we developed back in May as a result of an online survey as well as board study session, and they've been right in front of us every step of the way as well as we've reviewed potential scenarios, and they've guided our thinking. The recommendation for Three Rivers boundary was provided to you at the regular board meeting on January 22nd, and the title of the boundary scenario was Modified Scenario B.2. After that meeting, the Boundary Committee met a couple of times to review feedback and work through conversation and discussion around ways that we might potentially adjust that in response to feedback from the board that evening. And then some possible alternate scenarios, B.3 and B.4, have subsequently been developed and have been posted online and shared for public feedback. So just to refresh your memory, modified scenario B.2 was the recommended scenario on January 22nd. And I'll be sharing some of the data that goes along with this in a later slide. So this is what was presented to you on January 22nd. And Three Rivers, if I can do this, is right there. So that would be the boundary for Three Rivers. Modified scenario B.3 was developed in response to quite a bit of the feedback from the board in different ways to see if perhaps this might be an alternate. And this scenario places, responds to the concern around Three Rivers Elementary opening under capacity. This scenario would place Three Rivers at capacity once it's opened, and then it would also place Twain Elementary at capacity, which also under B.2 was a little bit under capacity. And it also addresses the concern regarding the higher numbers that B.2 had for Livingston. And again, we'll look at those numbers here shortly. And this is modified scenario B.4, and it, like B.3, brings Twain to capacity. It lowers Livingston's number to just a bit over capacity, but lower than B.2. And it does leave Three Rivers Elementary under capacity so that it opens in a way that it would allow for future growth. And again, also is somewhat reflective of some of the board feedback that we received on the 22nd. This is the data table for each of the scenarios. So what you see is the name of the school, the October 1 enrollment, and then the building capacity, and then what each of the different scenarios would have in terms of student numbers for 2019, where students would still be in the K-6 grade band because sixth grade won't move to the middle school until 2020. Three Rivers will open as a K-5, but of course, as we've stated before, we would provide for options for parents if parents would want their next year sixth graders to attend 1 year at Three Rivers. We would work to open sections of sixth grade at Three Rivers if there was that level of interest. And then, of course, in 2020, all of the schools would be K-5. Each of the scenarios you see there provide you with the respective numbers, and the year 2020 are the enrollment, estimated enrollment numbers that we have been looking at in response to the feedback. All of this information has been posted online and also shared with our schools and our staff, and we received feedback. Over 100 responses were received, and 70% of those shared a preference for scenario B.2. Related comments about what the interest level was and why. One is there's a general sense that it's important to consider having Three Rivers open a bit under capacity to allow for growth. There's also the desire that Livingston's number at the 519 or so is appropriate, that it provides for ongoing programming and services and so forth. And so it's been the scenario that has been more favored. Let's see. So these are the numbers. I don't know if you would like to discuss them at this point, but I'll move to the next slide, and then obviously you'll have an opportunity at that point if you'd like to. So given all the information gathered from JUB study analysis and the committee's work on developing the various scenarios, as well as the feedback from the public, staff, and the school board, along with the feasibility of the resulting numbers under modified scenario B.2 for every school, the district does renew its recommendation for modified scenario B.2 for Three Rivers Elementary. So at this point, it would be your opportunity to make a motion, or if you'd like me to return back to the data slide, happy to do that.
So thank you, Dr. Reyes. So I think if we're going to follow true Robert's Rules of Order, if you have any questions, you can ask those now. But before we get into any discussion, we probably need a motion. So does anybody have any questions for Dr. Reyes? All right, so seeing no questions, do we have a motion?
Mr. President, I will move to approve scenario B.2 as...
Actually, before we do that.
Okay.
I think maybe we ought to invite our audience members to come up before we make a motion and get too far along down this process. Sorry about that. So if anybody has any desire to speak on these boundaries, please come and to the microphone, tell us your name, your affiliation with the district, and then if you could limit your input to 2 minutes, that would be great. We'll still be here.
My name is Travis Cloth. I'm a parent. Superintendent Whitney, Board President Christensen, members of the board. I'm a parent of 2 children who have had the privilege of attending Livingston Elementary for the past few years. My wife, Rebecca, is a paraeducator in the primary resource room at Livingston, and I have been fortunate to be a volunteer at the school many, many times. As you can see, our family is heavily invested in what goes on at Livingston. Obviously, the reason we are all here tonight is because of the boundary proposals that are being considered by the board. In my opinion, and the opinion of several others that we have spoken to, we agree that the best scenario is modified B.2. Modified B.2 is the best choice for several reasons, and they are as follows.
First, it significantly decreases the enrollment at Livingston by about 315 students. This will be a tremendous impact for improving the overcrowding that Livingston has endured for many years. Secondly, it allows the building to keep its resources intact by not decreasing enrollment below 500 students. Typically, they are not afforded full-time assistants. Behavioral interventionists, counselors, and specialists schedules can be reduced below full-time. Our district claims that equity is important across our district, but stripping Livingston down to a skeleton will ensure inequitable experience for the remaining staff and students. Secondly, as a taxpayer and voter, it is beyond frustrating to think that the district would even consider opening a brand-new school at or near capacity. Clearly, future growth is north of Livingston, where Three Rivers Elementary is located. Yes, the consulting firm and the Boundary Review Committee have done their homework when it comes to anticipating how many students will live in a certain area. However, let us not forget what happened when Maya Angelou was built in 2004. The prediction at that time was that it would take 5 to 7 years for the school to be full. Maya was at capacity by year 2.
So do you,
Overcrowded.
pardon me, are you about done?
Yes, sir.
Because you're over 2 minutes, but
Okay.
if you're about done, we'll let
I
you
could
finish
stop.
up.
It's
It's up to you.
completely up to you.
Are there,
I think,
so anybody else want to speak? If we have a line of people, Mr. Graham, and
Thank you.
believe me, we'll let you speak. I'm not trying to cut you off, but if, I don't mean to cut you off. If you have a couple of other points you want to finish up quick, go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
okay, so I'll just make the third point and then I'll be done. Okay.
Fair enough.
Third, the Boundary Review Committee has tasked with the job of creating boundary solutions that are at the least impactful for all the students involved while creating neighborhood schools. Nowhere in their guiding principles did it say that they were tasked with creating solutions that would eliminate all portables at Livingston. Finally, we all know that change is difficult. We know that next year Livingston will look vastly different than it does right now. This isn't about opposing change. It's about ensuring that our district takes the appropriate steps to create a boundary solution that will last for several years to come. It's about making sure that the culture and the atmosphere at Livingston is not disrupted by one action or another of a board. It's about making sure that the work of the committee and consulting firm is honored and respected. And it's about making sure that the voters of West Pasco continue future support.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you. Could you spell your last name for me, please?
Kloth.
And you say it clothes?
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Mr. Grimm, are you next? Oh. Go ahead, Nathan.
Good evening, Superintendent Whitney, President Lehrman, President Christensen, former President Lehrman, and members of the board. I'm a taxpayer, member of the community, volunteer on the Community Builders Group, volunteer on the Boundary Committee, supporter of the district and supporter of equity in the district. I think it's great that we have a community at a school who's willing to come to a board meeting and advocate, but I must remind you that 800 students out of approximately 10,000 is 8% of our district. Livingston is one cog in a large gear. I don't believe that any of the boundary proposals that they do not support will harm the equity and the education that students at that school would receive. They will still have the appropriate support at the ratios that the state and the district provide. Will they lose some things that they think are important? They might. I will point out that modified B.3 is the only scenario that the committee developed. Staff developed B.4. And I also think it would be a grave mistake to adopt B.2 because the community at one school wants to be overcrowded. It's impossible for us to say, on one hand, that it's okay to overcrowd buildings when we set boundaries, but ask taxpayers to support bonds because we need to build new buildings because we're overcrowded. You can't have both. We need, as a district, to decide if we're okay with overcrowded schools or we're not. It's okay here and it's not okay there. The committee worked very hard to come up with what we thought was an equitable solution based on capacity at buildings, based on equity to the students in that area within the three boundaries of the new school, Livingston, and Twain. We need to do what's right for all of the parents and students, not just at one school.
Okay. So do you favor B.3? Is that the one you're?
I do favor B.3. I think it offers the best outcome. One of the things that I am concerned about that the committee did not consider was the districts made a choice to put their choice programs such as dual language in every school. I applaud that decision. I support that decision. However, I think it changes all the data that we considered. Because we considered data that had adjustments for migration due to those programs. As we age kids out of those programs, in 6 years we're going to have to redo boundaries if we go with any of these, because we did not consider that when we looked at these.
Okay.
So I would also ask the board to entertain deferring the decision. Unless someone can demonstrate the necessity right now, I don't think this is emergent, but I think it's important to consider because otherwise in 6 years, a school like Twain, which was a net exporter of students due to programs, will be way overcrowded with boundary kids.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Mr.
thank
Graham.
you.
Hello, Superintendent Whitney and members of the board. My name is Melissa Welch. I've taught for a long time, but this is my first year in Pasco. I also have 2 children that currently go to Livingston. And I teach at Ruth Livingston. And so I came from a school that I loved, and we worked really hard to do the things that we did, and we had a boundary change. The boundary change, we lost 26 staff members. And in a lot of our kids. And what it did is it changed us as a school. It changed our identity. The things we'd worked really hard for, it changed us. And so at Ruth Livingston, I have never seen a school like it. I have been in schools that I have thought were amazing and above and beyond, but I have never seen a school do what this school does. And a lot of that is because of the services we're able to have. If we were to go to scenario B3 or one that caused us to lose some of those sources like our behavioral interventionists, it would change who we are as a school. Livingston, I think, does amazing for how overcrowded. I know that's a concern, is the numbers being how big they are, but they do amazing. And within that year when it would bring us down even lower, it's not that much overcapacity, and it still allows us to maintain a lot of our staff, a lot of our services we offer our students, and what makes us a community. So it's not that it's just, Livingston wants to just be Livingston and nothing else. We do a lot of good there. And that's our goal. You know, as educators, as board members, as community members, we want what's best for our kids. And the atmosphere that's there, the things that they do, they put a lot of work into it. And when you remove the teachers you would have to remove, and the students, and the families, and the support, it's just a different place. It doesn't let them to keep doing the amazing things that they're doing. So scenario B.2 would be my recommendation there.
Thank you, Mrs. Welch. Anybody else want to speak to the board and share your thoughts? All right. Final call. So we'll close the comment section on the boundaries. So, board members, we have a decision to make. Does anybody want to make a motion?
Can I make a question? Can I?
Ask a question?
Thank you.
Yes.
So regarding Twain, one of the comments that was made was that they are a net exporter of students to different programs. Do we have any data on, because I know we're looking at restructuring and giving more kids in our district the opportunity to do a dual language a little closer to home. I know we're far out in making any real decisions there, but do we know how many that exports? How much would that really change in the next several years in the amount of students that Twain has?
I'll take a stab at it, but I have Spencer here. If Twain didn't have any students leaving or entering, and it was just the students within the boundaries as B.2 shows, the number of students at Twain would be 510.
With the number of students would be 510 in 2019 or right now?
2020.
In 2020, it would be 510. Okay, that's good to know. Thank you.
I have a question, Ms. Reyes. If we go to the chart that shows the different scenarios. I've heard the concern from the teachers, and my kids go to Ruth Livingston, and I commend you. You do have an excellent culture there, and I understand the concerns that if you lose too many teachers, you'll lose additional staff. But I'm concerned, what would the district say to the fact that we're taking McGee down below to 435? Do we believe that taking Livingston in scenario B.4 down to 461, what would we say to someone who says taking it down to 461 destroys the culture? Because in McGee, we're doing the same thing. We're taking it down to 435. I don't believe that we should be saying that we'll destroy the culture at 461 versus 519, because we have other schools that are going down also, and going down in numbers. And part of building new buildings and reducing overcrowding is that teachers are going to have to move.
So, Mr. Lehrman, are you asking a question?
I'm asking the question to Ms. Susanna is, what would our response be when teachers come to district staff and say, here's our concern, we're going to destroy culture by taking it down to 430, 461. As a board member, what would you tell me? Do we believe that lower numbers are going to destroy cultures at schools? Because if so, I'm concerned about McGee's numbers as well.
As a district, operationally, we look at our numbers of students in our schools and staff accordingly. And what a program of services in a school looks like really depends on what the needs are. And so we would have to go through a staffing process to determine what the level of programming of services would be at any school.
So I think the piece that I would just highlight to kind of underline or continue on Mrs. Reyes's rationale is the guiding principles that were utilized by the committee to recommend this don't have anything to do with culture. So this recommendation that she's presenting is because it aligns with those guiding principles, which was high engagement with stakeholders, neighborhood schools, and the configuration of those schools being able, or the neighborhoods to be able to pick them up and move them around is a limitation to how you balance those numbers out. So I just wanted to be careful about framing Susana's recommendation around your question, because that wasn't a consideration for us. These were the considerations for the committee. So I think that's just an important clarification from district's standpoint.
And the reason I ask is because we have awesome professionals like Miss Reyes, Miss Whitney, everyone else, and I believe that all of the options up here, the district staff is going to support the schools with the necessary support staff so that the students get what they need, regardless of the decision that the board makes and the numbers there. You guys have decision points in place to ensure that all of our students receive the services they need, and that you support the teachers regardless of the number of students at that school.
That is correct, and we would do that as well for the numbers under scenario B.2, which, under the guiding principles, really ensuring that we're listening to the feedback and so forth. It's completely operationally feasible and offers a responsive approach to what is also a concern about looking at Three Rivers Elementary and having it be open a bit under capacity to allow for growth. And it aligns with, as Superintendent Whitney said, with overall the guiding principles.
All right, so could we get a motion?
Mr. President, I move to approve scenario B.2 as the recommended boundary for Three Rivers Elementary School opening August of 2019 as presented.
I'll second the motion.
So it's been moved and seconded that we approve scenario B.2 as recommended, as the recommended boundary for Three Rivers Elementary School opening 2019. So do we have any discussion on this as a board?
I guess, so I'd like to say, I think any of the options will work, and we'd make it work. The students would be well off under any of those options. They're all under where we're at today. Thank you to all district staff that worked on these options and the volunteers that served on the community builders, the boundary scenarios, and the teachers and staff members, parents that came and shared with us tonight. I do agree with Mr. Grimman that we need to define in the future as a board when it's okay to be past brick and mortar capacity and when it's not. We've run into this problem multiple times. The last few times we've done our boundaries, when Angelo's parents came and said, we're willing to be overcrowded, and we said, okay, it's okay in your scenario. We're talking about doing this again. So thank you for sharing. Again, I believe any of the options will be great. My kids attend Livingston. Thank you to all the staff that makes the cultures there. My kids have attended Twain. Thank you to all the staff that makes a great culture at that school as well. And in that my kids are attending Livingston and live in the Mark Twain boundaries, and my wife also served some on the boundary committees, I would ask, Mr. President, that I be recused from voting in this decision here.
Fair enough.
I do have a little bit of comment. I'm not ready to make a vote yet. I know that I will not support B.3. I do not agree with opening Three Rivers at close to capacity, and it actually opens slightly above. I just don't think that makes any sense, and I have felt that way from the very beginning. My concern with B.2 is that we are knocking Twain down incredibly there. And originally, the reason that B2, they said that they couldn't change it, I think, to the B4 scenario, was that we were really worried about splitting that neighborhood. Well, we have since had people go out and realize that there's a really natural split in that neighborhood that's over to the far right. And it simply takes just, 40 kids or something? 58. And 58, and switches them. And I feel like by doing that, B4, it's a really good compromise between B2 and B3. And district staff didn't necessarily do B4. We, as a board, were looking at B2 and B3, and there's a huge difference between the two, and thought that perhaps having one that was more in the middle of those two was a better solution, or it might bridge the gap between both. What I like about scenario B.4 is we're not decimating Twain. Twain will be considerably 60 kids under capacity when the sixth graders move out. And when I go back and I look at all of the things that we set as a board that were considerations, B4 fits all of those, I personally feel, better than any of the others. It still leaves Livingston at almost 500 kids. There is a little bit of growth in Livingston. They do have some incredible programs. I love Livingston. Unfortunately, the culture at Livingston is going to change some regardless. We are going from an 820-person school. At best case, or at the, if we do B2, we're still losing about 300 kids. And this way, we're losing about 360 kids, so a little bit more. I've done a lot of research into elementary schools, and elementary schools from the 300 to 500 mark are extremely successful. That seems to be a great number to help kids feel successful, to make things feel more warm, and everything else. So I'm really torn between this B4 and, is that the right? B4 keeps Three Rivers down. It doesn't decimate Twain as much. It keeps them closer to capacity. It keeps Livingston a little bit closer to capacity. Twain has less growth, I think, than Livingston, and still allows Three Rivers to grow. So I'm a little bit concerned between those. I love Livingston, and I love that there is such a great culture there. And I also want to do what is best for our kids and reduce the overcrowding, keeping these neighborhood schools, and I really feel like B4 does that.
Okay, so we have a motion for B2, and anybody else want to say anything? Because
Yeah, but you
Go
go
ahead.
first.
go ahead.
No, I appreciate all the work that's been done on this. At some point we have to make a decision, right? I think this has gone on actually longer than most people realize, and this is not meant to be easy. If it was as easy as just looking at a chart, this wouldn't take any time, and we could just chart out that, with these new schools where all schools will be under capacity, we can get rid of all portables, and obviously it's so much more complex than that. So if we look at our guiding principles, and we've had tons of feedback. Do you know I do have one question actually, how many responses we got online? Because we don't have access to that. Or how much feedback the district got on the proposals? If you have a number, just the number of people that gave feedback.
The current ones, the B2, B3, over 100
Wow.
Online and via email.
So that's just on this.
Just on
Yes,
this.
just
The
on
other
this.
ones had more.
Yeah,
Yes,
he's
there's
asking
been-
for, in total, how much feedback have you gotten?
Over the entire process?
Yes.
Oh, goodness.
That would probably be hard, but over 100 just on this last one in the last 2 weeks.
Yes, yeah. Oh, in the entire process, easily over 800.
Okay.
Easy.
So I think one thing, just kind of looking at general principles again, and I do appreciate Mr. Lehrman bringing it up, we're going to be going through this again and again, and so I actually think we need to make this quicker and more concise, because eventually these people need a plan for their lives, our teachers, the families, and so actually I think if anything, looking back over the last 6 months, we need to do this quicker as a board, because we have people that have to make decisions about where they're going to live, where their kids are going to go to school, where the teachers are going to work, and so this affects a lot of people. Second principle, I think we confuse certain ideas or principles and we put them on the pedestal as like the ultimate goal or principle. So one would be a statement that we want to eliminate portables, which I'm in favor of. Of course, we want kids in schools. Okay, but that is not the ultimate goal. That doesn't supersede these other guiding principles. Another statement that I also agree with in general is that, we should in general not open schools hugely under capacity, or some variation of that statement. I would somewhat agree with that, but again, that's not the ultimate goal. And if we look at the projections, which are always off, and that's not a fault of the people making the projections, they're just off. that we know that Three Rivers is going to be over capacity very quickly. So there's just so many factors to weigh, and it's just not easy to look at a chart and make a decision. I also want to point out that we don't just make decisions based on emotion. You know, we get feedback on other decisions, and sometimes I think it's in line with what matches up with the reasoning and the data, and other times maybe it's not. And sometimes we haven't gone along with the decision just because there was a lot of feedback related to it because we had more information. Let me give one example about the projections. Mr. Cloth brought up Maya from 2004. We even have much more recent, if you look at McClintock and Franklin. McClintock right now is the largest, maybe the second largest, right neck and neck with Maya. And if you look at the projections, even from 1 year ago, from 2 years ago, it's over 100 students past that. I mean, so the projections in Franklin is over capacity, and they're still building schools there. So there are factors that do not show up on this, and I'll just give one example, and then I'll finish. The reason why our projections are always wrong, and they underestimate the growth. In the Tri-Cities, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has a temple. That draws a lot of families to our community. A lot of these families are young, and they look to find a house, and Pasco's houses are more affordable. So we have a very disproportionate amount of young families with young children, and this I can tell you because I practice pediatrics in Pasco, and that's been the case for years, and that's why every year our numbers, and no projection can capture that. No model captures that type of scenario. So Three Rivers is not going to be under capacity. If it's even under capacity at opening with these scenarios, it won't be for long. And that's a long number of statements, but I support B2. We need to make tough decisions, and we're going to have to, our other upcoming boundary decisions, we're going to have to be more concise, so people can make decisions. The last thing I'll say is that I think something we haven't mentioned is I believe firmly that we should allow family choice, that there should be grandfathering in, there should be if parents want to stay in their boundaries. And the good thing about this is it gives us the flexibility to do that. If someone wants to stay at Livingston, if someone wants to stay at Twain, I think we should support that as absolutely much as possible, which I think in all these scenarios we're able to do that a family can stay at the school that they want to go to. And I would appreciate that flexibility for our families going forward.
Hey, I would love to know from the board why B2 over B4 that keeps Twain and Livingston closer to the capacity marks rather than putting Twain considerably under and Livingston considerably over. Do you have an answer to that?
Well, my response would be, do you want to go back to the chart? My response would be that we've been looking at this for months. The district staff has reviewed the proposals. We've had feedback from the community, and B2 is what's overwhelmingly recommended, and I don't see a reason enough to say, I think you're right. I think B4 would be okay. And if the majority of the board voted on that, and I voted on B2, I'm fine with that. But again, we could reanalyze this every board meeting for the next 6 months. And at some point, we just have to make a decision so people can move forward with their lives and their planning of our schools. And so, no, I don't have a slam dunk that B2 is 100% better than B4, but those would be the reasons I would give. The feedback we've gotten from the community over the last 2 weeks as they've been available, the recommendation of our district staff, and then for the other reasons that I just mentioned.
I would agree. Thank you, Dr. Richardson. I think we do have to move forward. I would tell you, so I agree with Mr. Grimm, Mr. Lehrman, that we are making a decision that impacts all of our community, all of our school district. But this particular area here is, we've got a group of representatives here from this particular area that is most impacted by this, and I think they're overwhelmingly in support of B2. I personally like B2. I thought when we met last time as well that, we probably need to take some from Livingston because it is more overcrowded than Twain and move them back to Twain. But in looking at this, Twain is going to be under capacity. It has room to grow. Livingston is going to be over capacity. It's still 300 students. Again, according to these projections, it's still 300 students less than it is currently. But I believe we will be rebuilding Twain a lot sooner than we will, not Twain. We will be rebuilding Livingston sooner than we will be rebuilding Twain, and this may just make that even more attractive now. And I agree with Dr. Richardson, even though Three Rivers is under capacity, again, according to these projections, it's not going to be there for long. If you just go up and take a drive through that neighborhood and look at the housing starts and the lots that are platted out there, that area is going to grow quickly. So I am in favor of B2, and I agree. I think it's time to make a decision and move on. And if we can do anything to speed this process up, and it probably needs, the calibration needs to start here. So, but I am in favor of B2 as well. So is there any other discussion, or are we ready to vote? All right, could we get a roll call, Mrs. Richardson?
Mr. Christensen?
Okay, so just for clarification, we're voting on the proposal to, for B2. So my vote is yes.
Ms. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Lincoln?
Yes.
Dr. Richardson?
Yes.
And Mr. Lehrman has recused himself. So motion carries. B2 is the scenario that it will be adopted. So thank you.
2 more to go.
Well, the good news is we're getting smarter. So let me get back to the agenda here. Okay, so that concludes action items. We'll move on to reports. Looks like our first report is inclusive playgrounds. So you want to introduce that?
Sure. So it is really my honor to invite both Executive Director of Special Service and Executive Director of Special Projects to the podium this evening to present a culmination of what I think is just a really innovative approach to how you utilize both the interface between special services and capital projects to deliver something that's really truly incredible for our students. I also want to recognize Robin Hay, who's in the audience. She was also integral in this process. So I just really applaud all three for their work around this and hope you are as really inspired by this effort as I've been as I've watched it unfold.
Thank you, Michelle. Good evening, Board President Christensen, Ms. Whitney, and the members of the board. My name is Tracy Wilson. I'm the Executive Director for Special Services, and as Ms. Whitney said, we've got Randy from Special Projects, and it was a great opportunity to work closely with program and facilities to come up with something that's going to be really fabulous for our school district. So the topic this evening is inclusive playgrounds. So what do we mean by inclusive playgrounds? The definition of, sorry, I'm in between glasses where I need them for distance, and I'm not quite sure. I've heard about bifocals, haven't quite got that far yet, so bear with me here. The definition of inclusive, covering or including everything, open to everyone, not limited to certain people. With inclusive playgrounds, this is exactly what we are talking about. The objective is to include everyone. Inclusive playgrounds are thoughtfully designed to provide a safe place where children of all abilities can play together and are developmentally appropriate for children with and without disabilities. An inclusive playground takes away the barriers to exclusion, both physical and social, providing a sensory-rich experience for all. So, inclusive playgrounds, what does that mean? What about ADA? Of course, our playgrounds are accessible by the ADA standards, but inclusive playgrounds take this a step further. They ensure a positive and engaging experience for all. On an inclusive playground design, we have considerations beyond just physical accommodations. A physical accommodation on a playground is one component. It might meet the ADA requirements by providing a wheelchair accessible route or one transfer or ramp. There may be one piece of equipment that is customized to fit a student with a particular disability, but inclusive playground includes more. Engaging. Inclusive playgrounds provide a number of different opportunities for children to explore. They integrate all of the senses and encourages social play. There is a little something for everyone, including those that like to climb, run, spin, slide, swing, and more. Inclusive playgrounds are integrated. A true inclusive playground doesn't mean that there is special equipment and a separate area off to the side, but rather a space designed in a cohesive community where play opportunities are integrated throughout, and this is important for social development. and promoting inclusion. Inclusive playgrounds have another mission that goes beyond the physical accommodation. They do so much more for the community by educating and bringing families together and people together. They stress the importance of inclusion in everyday activities, no matter what the ability level. They prove that kids of all abilities enjoy exploring, learning, interacting, and having fun together. They stress compassion and, well, really the inclusion of those that are different from you, and that's a lesson that benefits us all. ADA was a great start. However, it became a checkbox, and we did the ADA thing, now we'll move on. It really limited people's innovation and creativity just because we could say we've done ADA compliance. Universal design is a framework for the design of environments, products, buildings, ideas, and more with the express goal that they are usable for the widest range of abilities. The framework includes an inclusive play design philosophy to ultimately increase access, safety, comfort, and social participation within our play environments. Here I'm showing you the 7 principles of universal design, which were actually developed by the Center for Universal Design at the University of North Carolina, at the North Carolina State University. Their work, which focuses on originally adult use of indoor environments, was actually the basis for Utah State University's Center for Persons with Disabilities development. And along with Playcore, which is a playground design vendor, they put together what was called the Universal Design for Playgrounds for Inclusive Design. The children want to be and feel that their experiences are fair and that they are included, that they are smart, they can be independent, safe, active, and comfortable during play. In order to have a universal design or an inclusive playground, these 7 elements would need to be evident as far as the playground goes. I'll just briefly explain what these 7 different topics mean. So equitable use or design is useful and marketable to people with diverse abilities. Flexibility in use. It accommodates a wide range of individual preferences and abilities, from a dramatic play to play components to fine and gross motor, a variety of skills. They should be simple, but yet intuitive use. Easy to understand regardless of the user's experience, knowledge, language skills, or current functioning level. There should be perceptible information. Communicates necessary information effectively to the user regardless of the conditions or the user's sensory abilities. There should be tolerance for error. We want to minimize hazards and the adverse consequences of accidental or unintended actions. There would be age-appropriate play equipment that applies the safety standards and addresses potential hazards. Cozy spots offer areas to seek sensory relief, and jump-in points that offer places to observe and understand play activities prior to participating. Seating and supervision areas that provide clear visibility of activities. And then the low physical effort, used effectively and comfortably with a minimum of fatigue. Accommodations might include things as high backs or seats to help maintain body positions. Equitable alternatives are found with the play experiences, and there's balanced play experiences that promote social inclusion through the reciprocal interaction and encouragement of play. So our process, and this is Randy and Robin and a host of other people, our safety risk manager, Aubrey Fitzer, Tom Hitt, our manager of compliance, Steve Story, who is here, I think, also this evening. Thank you so much, Executive Director of Maintenance Operations, Susanna Reyes, and Michelle Whitney, of course, for your ongoing support and encouragement in this project that started as an idea maybe a few months ago, and here we are today, super excited to share this with you. So last December, the district committee got together to put together what we call an RFP, or request for proposal, to submit the elements of what we were looking for in an inclusive playground design using the North Carolina and the Utah State University's design principles. We had a deadline of January 9th, and in they came. We were just amazed and surprised at the wonderful presentations that were submitted. We had a vendor presentation on January 17th where both district staff and parents were able to come and have a view of what we were doing, what was happening. I'm not sure if any of the parents are here this evening. Weather's been a little difficult, of course, getting us here. And then that same evening, we took those different designs, the different presentations. We had people from, I think, South Carolina or Tennessee and all over the country came to submit to be part of this proposal. And then we were able to select on the 18th and notify the vendors. I feel like a drum roll, right? And here we have is a schematic drawing of the inclusive playground. They have numbers 1 through 7 with the different elements of all those different things that you can butt up against those 7 universal design principles. The swing will actually be replaced. Somebody in the safety department decides that that's not what we do, so we had to accept that. So they are not rebidding, but we're working actually tomorrow on some alternatives, but we need to make sure it hits elements 6 and 7 over there, Randy, right? So, or something, so we make sure we have all 7 universal principles. So this is the equipment that will be at Three Rivers Elementary School, and we want to point out there are shade structures on this equipment that withstand, help me out, Robin and Randy, 90-mile-an-hour winds. And I'm going to say, how much snow did we say? I'm not. So let's just hope that the 100-year snow truly was the 100-year snow this month. And as many of you know, there's just different needs for that. The shade is not only just a convenience. There's actually some children that cannot be outside unless there's some shade structures, and we're not really known for our trees around here. So this is an element that was a huge parent input, as you can see with the ramps and things as well. So, okay. And then this is a bigger drawing of that if you want to take a look at that later. Here's the part that's super exciting for us. The Play Corps program that comes from the university, the Utah State University, has what's called a National Demonstration Site designation. It is a program of excellence. It demonstrates a community's commitment to advancements in play and recreation. It recognizes this national designation, the efforts to inspire communities to build and play spots. Our school district here in Pasco will be the first playground in the state of Washington that will have a national designation site for the United States. This is a map of anything in red actually is a fully inclusive design, and I tried to put a little Pasco right here. There is one, I think, in Portland, if you can see it, but it's not in Washington. So we still get the first designation in Washington, but as you can see, these other colors demonstrate they might have some of the principles. The ones with red meet all 7. So we will be literally on the map for our inclusive playground design moving forward. In addition, the work and the collaboration, the communication that we've had over the course of the past few months has really made a commitment, and I thank Michelle for being so supportive of this, that this really will be the standard in moving forward for any equipment or playground that we either redesign, upgrade, build. We have 17, or Columbia River coming up soon. We're already excited about those possibilities to be able to truly support our belief in inclusivity and equity and to embrace that play experience. It's not just playing separately. Again, it's about playing together and really living walking the walk. And walking the talk, I guess, all of that. So all future designs will incorporate the universal design principles, and that is my presentation. So thank you. This was exciting for me to share. There's just a few things I get super excited about, and this has been just a great experience, especially with all the people we're working with. And again, Steve and Randy for looking at me a little crazy when we're like, what do you mean? Of course we do great playgrounds already, so.
So I just wanted to point out, too, through this process, one of the things that we found is that we were able to maximize budget by this process as well. So not only is this all of the amazing things that Tracy just talked about, but it ended up being a real budgetarily efficient way to go at this process too. So just an amazing way to innovate. Sometimes you think innovation means expensive or more expensive, and in this case we felt like we got kind of quote unquote a bigger bang for our buck.
We actually didn't believe all the designs that were submitted were actually the real ones, and we had to look at Randy, and Robin was like, well, these must just be samples. This can't really be what they're proposing, and they were. So again, totally awesome. So,
Well, thank you.
all right, thank you.
For that presentation. So, board members, any questions?
It's very exciting. I'm excited for Three Rivers and all future work going forward, and thank you for the work looking into it. I'm curious, what does it cost, not looking back, but if we were to go retrofit or to upgrade an existing playground here, and are there any grants available that we could chase down for some of our schools that are getting long in the tooth? I see Ms. Collins sitting there. I mean, just a personal example here, inclusivity and equity, that's great, and we're striving for that in the district, but even at, like, when my kids attended Mark Twain last year, an example, my kindergarten daughter comes home with ripped pants 5 days in a row, different pair of ripped pants, and we're going, what in the world is going on here? She luckily she wasn't cut or anything, and it comes out that, I don't know if it was a plastic slide or a metal slide or what it was, but something on the slide as all the kids are going down is cutting their pants. So I don't know how many kids went home with ripped pants. The teachers may know. And my wife called the principal or maybe Mr. Nunemaker's department, and something happened. I don't know if they patched it or what happened, but I know there's other examples like that in the district where some of our equipment is getting a little long in the tooth, 20, 30 years old. And how do we go about replacing that? Is a bond required, or do we have other money that can replace it, grants?
I can only probably answer a very small portion of that question, and the rest of it's a very big response. But the ability to go after grants and different opportunities like that this has really been a jumping off point for starting to research some of those opportunities as far as what we can do. And I've already had people calling me, asking me about it. We're looking at, different ways to make that happen. But as far as any big, large scale reboot of all of that would be certainly a much larger process, and we haven't really explored what that looks like yet. So, Michelle, if there's anything else you would want to add to that,
or our board leadership, when appropriate, can we have that discussion and report as a board? Because if we can both add innovation and equity and all of that while also repairing some of our structures that are badly in need of replacement, it'd be good to know how we do that and how it's funded and what options are out there. Thank you. Ms. Wilson.
thank you.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lehrman. I have some similar questions. If one of the benefits that we haven't discussed of the elementary changes is there's going to be more playground space available at nearly every elementary school, not just per child, but actual number more space. And so I think that is something we need to look at and how we can increase that. Last year when I visited Ochoa and had lunch with students, I just asked them, what do you love about your school? What could be better? And one student, she said, I just wish we had more basketball hoops outside at lunch and break. Everyone just like sits around on their phones, and I want to go do something active. And I loved that. I wanted to give her a hug, but I didn't. Inappropriate. We've got to make that available, and this is a perfect opportunity that's going to become available at all of our elementary schools, which have historically been so overcrowded that the kids just literally cannot play certain games. My kids they have to call off the kickball and call off the basketball because there's so many kids that they just can't navigate getting along with 30 kids trying to play kickball or bump in basketball. So I agree, this is something that we should really look at over the next year or two as our elementary schools decrease their student population. We could really maximize playground space and for all the schools.
Okay. Thank you. That was good. I just have one question, and you're not up there, but the low physical effort is a design point?
Yeah,
That-
help me with that. I had the same question.
Doesn't surprise me you asked that question. It's about a range of that there's challenges along the way, so it's not just one spot. It's low, medium to high is actually the further extension of that, where you don't have to be able to physically navigate super challenging things, but it goes all the way from a low point to increasingly challenging points amongst the structure, so kids can integrate and participate and not being felt left out. So it was really more of the
right there. The girl in the middle is able to
Yeah, so it needs to be able to include those who have the ability for low physical effort, but also be part of the inclusive piece. But the further definition is, again, that range. Because
you.
low physical effort on a playground sounds a little counterproductive, right? So,
And I'm kind of sad about the swings. I mean,
I take it there was some giggling out there. That must be a big deal.
Is that-
I wasn't
why is
aware of
that a
that.
big deal? Are you guys for or against swings? Why is, I'm lost in the giggling part of it. So,
Yeah, why? Yeah, we all survived.
I know, and I love this. I think this is an innovative, I think it's beautiful. I love the presentation, and I think things that are more inclusive are really important. I also think childhood has some innate risks, and I'm not gonna not let my children go sledding because they might end up with stitches like I got when I was sledding.
right.
You know what? I survived, and I have great memories, and I take my children sledding knowing they might get hurt. Swings, and really, we can't, I mean, some bylaw or something, we can't have swings?
Totally out of my scope of being able to respond to that, so.
Well, I love these
Yeah.
swings. I've been in a park that has one of these swings that accommodates people with disabilities. I love that. It's a small child swing, several different kinds of swings, and I just think they're fabulous, but that's my opinion.
Yeah,
So-
no, oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, just on the swings, yeah, I mean, I think that's a tragedy personally, and I agree. Some of these decisions, they may not seem like a big deal, and, it's kind of funny, but really they have an effect. So so no schools that are in our district have swings, is that right? So, we've let the.
I'm happy to have Aubrey Pitzer and the risk assessment people do a
Let's do it.
presentation or like get you some information about the swings. That it was made with like a definitive recommendation based on the risk. So
yeah.
we can get you that information.
And I'm sure that's every school district in our state, but I disagree with it because we've let the fear, and I'm really serious about it, we've let the fear of injury change childhood so much that our children have overwhelming anxiety and depression because we've tried to take away any risk or any uncomfortable situation. And it's just such hypocrisy that we allow sports like football, and I broke my arm playing football as a kid, and I love football, but not swings. My daughter broke her arm on a swing. But we could have taken both those things away, and 3 weeks ago, my son jumped off the couch and broke his foot. It's just, honestly, I guess we're accident prone, but it really is. I would like us to look at that. We could maybe be a district that takes a stand on that because honestly, it's a tragedy.
It's not driven by the risk of injury. It's driven by the risk of having to pay for that injury.
Well, right.
No,
Fear of injury
litigation.
and the repercussions, being sued, the child
Exactly.
being injured, and having the parents. It's fear of what happens if someone gets injured.
Traveling through Canada, I was so disappointed in all of our playgrounds. I've never seen a playground like the Canadian playgrounds at their schools. They're so incredible. I want to go play at those playgrounds. What a great playground where parents actually want to go play with their kids. So I think, well, anyway, that's another discussion. Obviously, we're taking it to the nth degree. I'd like to see how much more we have to pay for insurance so we can just have swings. Anyway.
So cost-wise, how does this compare to the playgrounds we have? Do you have that information? Are these much more?
I have more information on that than I do.
Okay.
So originally, when elementary 16 or Three Rivers Elementary was budgeted for, it was given a price for a regular toy, like we would have put it in any of our other toys. Thanks for Tracy coming to us and expressing, the want to do the inclusive toy. As we took a look at that, well, all we did is take out the budget, what we had for that, and we provided that so that these 5 vendors could bid for that. So it's come in at the same price as that budget. So it's on budget. But what I can tell you is going through that process and what we saw, assuming that it was going to be a specialty type toy, we thought it would come in either very high dollars or we would get not much of a toy. Right. And we found that we got a lot more than what we thought for the budget that we had. So it's on budget, same budget as we would put for another toy, and I think we actually got more.
Good news.
That's great news.
Thank you. Anything else from the board? All right. Anybody in the audience want to comment on playground toys? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next agenda item,
So it's my incredible honor to invite Executive Director of Fiscal Services Kevin Hebden to the podium for his first ever board report as a Pasco School District employee. So with that, I feel like we need a drum roll.
And he gets the exciting
Yes.
topic of bus leases.
program update. Look, you're getting applause, Kevin. You didn't even say anything yet.
Thank you. I appreciate that very much. Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Whitney, it's my opportunity, my pleasure to be before you this evening to give you a brief update on our bus lease program. This started out with a need of 53 buses that are over 13 years old. When our buses get over 13 years old, they no longer bring revenue back into the district through the state program. So back in September, on the 25th, staff presented to the board the idea that we would entertain a lease program to replace 15 buses. At the November 13th, 2018 Board of Directors meeting, this group approved a lease agreement. As we work towards executing that agreement, we came across a couple other options that we could entertain that would favor the district. One of those, so we're buying 15 buses. They are on order currently, and they're expected to be here in April. We are still eligible for a Washington State Department of Ecology grant of $525,000 to help offset that $2.08 million. So the funds needed for the remainder of those 15 buses is, the remainder portion of those 15 buses is $1.56 million. I'd like to reiterate that the district will own those buses at the end of this lease. So what's changed since you approved the lease agreement? As I mentioned, we came across some additional options that favor the district, and so we went ahead and made the decision to cancel that lease agreement. And so we're now entertaining the option of utilizing the Office of the State Treasurer local program offered by the Washington State Treasurer's Office. Something else that's changed is the funding. They offer 3 times throughout each year where they offer up funding opportunities. Those fall in February, June, and October. As we came across this, we just barely missed the November 13th deadline to submit a notice of intent with the State Treasurer's Office. So we'll be looking towards that June funding opportunity. Overall, the savings that we would have by using this lease program through the State Treasurer's Office, the lease agreement that you approved at the November meeting was a 3.495% interest rate. The last issuance in January of this year that the State Treasurer's Office issued was a 2.07% 5-year term. So that equivocates to about $41,000 in savings over the life of that lease. So what is the local program? It's a cost-effective way for Washington municipalities to finance equipment and or real estate projects. Local financing is structured as a financing contract or lease. They use the term interchangeably: loan, lease, contract. And these, again, are offered through the Office of the State Treasurer, or OST. So what OST does is they gather all of these different submittals for projects, and they group them together. They find those that are wanting to purchase those, and they issue them as certificates of participation. They're similar to municipal bonds, where investors are guaranteed an income stream from the lease payments by those municipalities for the life of the loan. Again, would like to reiterate that after the individual lease expires, ownership of the financed piece of property is retained by the local agency or the school district. Funds are generally issued, like I said, 3 times a year, and we're shooting for the June opportunity. The local program allows participants access to the national tax-exempt market through a competitive bid process. And what's nice is it's regardless of the size of the money that you need. You know, you think of our bonds are $99 million, the last one we passed. You know, here we're looking at $1.5 million, and that might not be attractive to some. And so they group them together and find us an attractive rate. Also, by pooling with the state's rating, the certificates that are issued, the participants are able to take advantage of the state's very low tax-exempt interest rates and low issuance costs, because we share the cost of issuing that with all the other municipalities that are participating in that program. Again, the interest rate for the last issuance from the state is 2.07% APR, and 3.495 was what we were looking at through the lease, savings of $41,000. The state's program is very streamlined, and they offer great support through their OST staff. This also came as a recommendation by our bond counsel and also from our financial advisors. To give you an idea of who uses this program throughout the state, school districts make up about 33.3% of the 780 issuances that have been issued. I think this goes back to 1999. So then what types of equipment or real estate are purchased? In the other column there on the right, about 60.9% of all of the lease types are for some type of a vehicle, which is what we'll be using this for. So how is the funding going to work for us? We have buses that are on order. They're arriving in April. We have to pay for them. And so here's a little bit of a timeline on how we propose working through this process. We'll apply with the OST by March 15th this year. Again, our buses are online to arrive in April. And we propose paying for those buses with a loan from the general fund. That'd be approved at a March, possibly the 26th March board meeting. And then the board will also need to approve the contractor agreement with the Office of the State Treasurer in April in order to meet the May 3rd deadline. We will then submit for reimbursement of the $525,000 for the Department of Ecology grant by June 30th. The OST funds will be available June 25th. And then with that money and the Department of Ecology, we can pay back the loan to the general fund and make everything whole. Our first payment would then be, that's about $330,000, and that should be done on December 1st of 2019. I wanted to add also, considering our debt capacity, as we've been talking about the long-term facility management plan, this will not impact the decisions that are being made there. And with the bonding information that was proposed earlier in the study session, we've been working with Scott Bauer, and all that. The information on this lease has been considered in the numbers that he's presented. Our debt capacity, remaining debt capacity, is about $144,000. So this $1.5 million lease is a drop in the bucket, really, in that capacity. Easy peasy. Any questions you may have, happy to answer those. Appreciate the opportunity to bring this before the public and provide you with an update on where we're at with that.
Any questions from the board?
So what does this put, I know that we had when I first came on the board, I think we had buses still that were 30 years old-ish. I know they were over 25 years old. And the goal was to get these buses under 15 years old, and we were making really great progress. What will this do toward that progress? And what will the age of, what is going to be the oldest buses in our fleet?
Oh, I think they were about, it's been a bit since I've looked at the listing, but I think they were about 2003 or 4 Anybody in the room have different information than that? No. Steve, do you remember?
Those buses will be somewhere between 17 and 20 years as we go through this.
Yeah. And we've been working with transportation to come up with that plan to utilize and capitalize on the state's transportation vehicle funding, where a vehicle, if it's 13 years or newer, we're receiving that depreciation funds. So that puts about $105,000. With these 15 vehicles that we put into our fleet, remove 15 that are older than 13 years from our fleet, and that puts about $105,000 a year in our pocket for in our transportation vehicle funding. So, yeah, the plan is to see what we can do, get out a plan so that we have a smooth vehicle replacement schedule.
Yeah, so there's 53 buses that are over 13 years old. We're replacing, well, we're purchasing 15 new ones. I'm not sure we'll excess 15 buses because we probably need additional buses as we grow, but anyway.
The 15 buses will be decommissioned as part of the Department of Ecology. It's a requirement of the grant that we decommission
okay.
15.
Okay, good to know. So yeah, thank you. That would be interesting to know. I'm not sure it's vital information, but the age of our fleet, if we could get that maybe in a Friday update, just
Yeah,
include that
happy to
information.
provide that.
You know,
Absolutely.
I love this. I love the innovative way that I feel like the district office is going with this playground. That is just incredible. And then these buses, it's like a win-win situation. We can't lose everything. We're not spending anymore. We're actually spending less. We're getting brand new buses. It's safer. They're safer for our kids. They're better for our bus drivers. We have a shortage of bus drivers. I can't think that might not help get more bus drivers if we have decent buses for them to drive. So I love the innovative thinking that we have seen from the district lately, and I hope it continues.
Thank you. Kudos to our transportation department for being on top of it, for the Department of Ecology grant and other areas that they're looking at to do that.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hebden. Appreciate it. Anybody in the audience want to comment on buses?
I just want to say thank you, too. I appreciate the proactive approach, and I know Mr. Hebden met with most of the board members, and I appreciate that opportunity as well to see some of the other things that we're looking at to realize the cost savings to the district. So this is something that I think would be nice to incorporate into some of our planning, because I hope that we can actually decrease our bus fleet over time by, we're moving to neighborhood schools, so I would like to see us actually decrease that over time, not increase, and that more kids would be walking to school, riding their bikes, and that with our neighborhood school transition with all these new schools, that we're actually need less overall buses.
Okay, so we don't have any extended study or discussion tonight. So future agenda items, so we'll have Ms. Whitney go over that, but is there anything any board members want to add to a future agenda? Okay.
So for our next board meeting, our approach to the evening will be slightly different. Just a reminder for the board, over the course of the last few months, at various times, Sarah has walked you through some conversation around school board elections. So one of the pieces that was requested by the board was some legal counsel about the potential of kind of the litigation pieces around that aspect of director districts. And so we will start our evening together at 4:30, but actually in an executive session under 4231.10(1)I, which is litigation, where you'll be given information about kind of the legal aspects of that topic. During the actual board meeting, we have scheduled an update on the Columbia. We're just sticking with facilities management and boundaries. So Susanna will be back in front of you to give you an update on where we are in the Columbia River Elementary boundaries. We have a placeholder there for an extended study session on the long-term facilities plan. Because of the postponement of this meeting to tonight, I'll work with board officers tomorrow to potentially ask for that to get pushed out to the next board meeting, given kind of the we should have had a week in between, and that didn't happen. So we may need to do a little bit of adjustment to the future agenda items tomorrow in agenda setting.
Okay. Sounds good, thank you. So moving on to communications, Mr. Lehrman, do you want to start?
Thank you to everyone out there who came to the board meeting tonight to give us your input. New faces we haven't seen before, old faces that we've seen many times. Thanks for coming. Thank you to Mr. Hebden. As Mr. Richardson alluded to, he offered to meet with all of us. I came in and had a good discussion. Thanks for sharing the possible challenges we may have with the budget, and then also the opportunities for efficiencies that you and your staff and the rest of the district are looking at, being proactive with. Went to New Horizons. Many of us went to New Horizons graduation last week. Winter graduation, always inspiring to go to the graduations that we have at each of our high schools that are not during the spring, not the main compensatory, or not the main graduation, to see those kids, the challenges that they've gone through and the stick-with-itness that they've had to graduate, and also the staff that helps them get there. So thanks to all for that event. Went over and met with Mr. Johnson last week at New Horizons, had a tour, and it was a snow day. They had a lot going on. It wasn't a snow day, I guess they were in school, but they were calling off school over at New Horizons, or over at CBC, I think. So a lot of those kids have daycare. A lot of those teachers have daycare that's over there. So they had a lot of challenges that day, even though it was more quiet because the students weren't there. And I thought that they were very organized in staying on their feet. So I appreciate that visit. Also, thanks to Livingston and Mr. Issa for allowing me to visit last week as well. And then my family's just been dealing with the snow. And on a side note, I have young kids from ages 2 to 11, and our 15-year-old dog passed. And so we've been dealing with a lot of emotions at our house since those kids have all known the dog for their entire life. So thank you to, and I take it, there's a lot of emotions to deal with. Thank you to all the staff that deal with kids' emotions all day, not just the counselors and the few social workers we have, but I know that you teachers get to see that every day, and you help all of our students with those emotional challenges that they go through in their family and personal life. So thank you.
Wow. I just want to thank all of the community members that have worked on the boundaries and the boundary committee and the other community members that have worked on the other communities' sessions and been to all of the meetings. It's been a long challenge, and I know it's a lot of hard work and a lot of sessions that they've gone to, and I just want to appreciate all the work that you've done. So thank you.
So there are a few ready for kindergarten sessions left for the winter session. The one that I was going to go to at McClintock was rescheduled due to snow, so there's still a chance you can sign up for that online, or you can call to schedule to come in there. Excellent classes. Be inspired as a parent. The New Horizons graduation was wonderful. If you ever want to be really touched and motivated to just be a better person and really be inspired, go to one of our winter graduations at New Horizons or one of our other high schools. They're brief, so you can fit it in, and it's just power-packed with inspirational students and messages. So thank you, Mr. Johnson, for having that for us. And I told him I may have to keep attending even when I'm off the board because it's such an enjoyable experience.
I hope everyone enjoyed their second winter break. My sleeping schedule is still messed up, so I'm gonna have to fix that. I also went to the New Horizons graduation, and I've never been to a New Horizons graduation, so that was really cool, and it was really moving experience. And I even saw kids that I knew from Pasco, so I was like, oh wow, congratulations, you did it. So yeah.
I just like to say, with the delays and the cancellations that we've had, something that has come really in handy is having the Pasco School District app, because it's a great way to get notifications about delays or cancellation of events or meetings, and also just to know when events are and things like that. So I would really encourage people, if you don't have it yet, to get the app, because it really is a great resource.
First and foremost, I'd like to thank the people who presented the inclusive playgrounds. And, personally, I don't know anyone with disabilities, but I know that the children and the families are going to be so very grateful for such an opportunity for their children. And on another note, school's back in session, and isn't that fun? In all honesty, I'm so glad to be back. You know, I love my teachers, love my classes. But the thing that I need to catch up on is all the schoolwork that piled up throughout the week. But other than that, it's going to keep me busy. It's better than doing nothing at home for a whole week. I just really, really hope that it doesn't keep on snowing like it did last week. And, you know, we hopefully get rid of all this snow, because I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but I want spring and summer here. So, you know, it's crazy.
Well, we have quite a few teachers here today, and I'm guessing that the elementary students were really excited to get back as well. I've been teaching math at Hanford High School for the last 3.5 months, and I'm almost at the end of it. The lady I'm teaching for is coming back off maternity leave. But I could not believe, usually my kids are like, you know, I've had them over Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, all the breaks, and they're like, back to school. Totally different feeling today. They were like, we are so glad to be back. I think everybody being homebound was not good for their social lives. And since kids don't really, no offense, really know how to talk on the phone or do some of those things that help with sociality more than just, you know, this, I think they were glad to be able to interact with each other again. So that was exciting. Some great things are happening in some of our sports right now. We have Tijuana High School their wrestling team won state. That is incredible. And I know that the basketball team just advanced. I'm sure there's more things, but I wondered how the dance team did at Pasco High School. They usually always play, so are they still doing that?
I know regionals is at Pasco.
So it's coming
next weekend or the weekend after.
Okay.
So it's soon.
So that is great. Anyway, so we've had a lot of success in the schools, and I just want to thank those who are involved with our transportation. And I really appreciated knowing the night before that school was going to be late. That was very helpful. Working for Richland, one time I got up at 5:30, got ready. There was no announcement made till 6:10 a.m. I was not happy. And I'm like, I already knew my kids didn't have school, but it hadn't come through yet. So I shouldn't diss Richland publicly. But I just appreciated knowing what was going on in Pasco and knowing it ahead of time. So I didn't go wake up all of my kids really early and then have to tell them, you know, well, you can go watch TV or whatever because we're not having school. So thank you.
So I want to thank those who have participated in this boundary exercise. It sounds like we're 1/3 of the way through, so hopefully we're more than 50% through the challenges. We've learned some things that will help us, but boundaries are never easy, and there's always people that feel like they got what they wanted and those who feel like they didn't. And so one of the challenges that we face as a community is being able to share our ideas and still remain friends. And it seems like in this political environment that we're in, that's a hard thing to do. But I hope as a community that we can do that. We can share our ideas and recognize that, you know what, so this time it didn't go my way, but we'll be together in this. And we've got 2 more to do. We've got Columbia River and then middle school, which will impact bigger sections of our community. So stay tuned, and appreciate you coming and sharing your input tonight. That's what makes this process a lot more efficient, is when we get the input from the different participants. That helps us make a better and more informed decision. So thank you to those who have participated. Congratulations to Tijuana High School, state wrestling champs this year. I think they had 3 state champs. Pasco was 5th. So they were in there as well. They didn't have any state champions. I don't think they had a couple of guys in the finals, but they
some guys placed second.
Yeah, a couple of second places. But that's exciting. I love wrestling. It's a great sport. Also, I went to the Pasco High play. Outsiders, yeah, that was good. That was a lot of fun watching those kids participate. That is My son participated when he was a senior, had never done anything like that before. Just a great experience for these kids to get outside of their comfort zone and participate in that. So that was a lot of fun. Legislatively, so we were supposed to go to Olympia this past weekend, but it got canceled, of course, because of snow, not just here, but snow across the state. So no real update there. The legislature is still in session. Things are still in flux. So we don't know exactly what the impact is going to be, but we will keep you posted as we know more about that. So that's all I have.
I just wanted to, kind of in the spirit of being inspired, obviously the New Horizons graduation was mentioned, the Chihuahua and the Pasco High wrestlers were mentioned. I wanted to highlight, Keeper did a story on one of our wrestlers, Victor Silva, who's one of our students in our deaf education program. And if you haven't seen it, it would really be worth, like people are shaking their head out there, worth looking or going and finding the link and taking a look. And he is an absolute inspiration. I've had the opportunity to meet him a couple years ago and kind of followed him as an individual. And there's a couple of kind of sub-story plots within the piece that Keeper did. One is he has a drill partner that he's had the same drill partner for 3 years, and that student learned to sign so that he could communicate with him. And then the interpreter, she goes to every practice, every tournament, and she's like dressed down and she's down on the mat, because he has to be able to see her. And so just like any other, it's incredible. And the relationship between those two is just absolutely inspiring. So literally got the link and was standing in my kitchen at 5 a.m., tears just streaming down my face. And I promised myself in that moment that I will never complain that things are too hard. And then that last week happened. And I want to just really acknowledge our transportation, Steve Story back there, and our transportation director, Jose Hernandez, and the tremendous work that he does. And our maintenance and custodial staff, our grounds crew, the incredible impact to those folks last week. They got our schools all ready to go, and then it dumped 4 more inches overnight. And you could almost just sense the defeat in them, and they're cold and tired. And anyway, we drove around and we delivered coffee and little snowman cookies that Starbucks donated, which I thought the irony was not lost on me, and donuts. And they were so happy to see us with hot coffee, but they were absolutely incredible through this whole thing. And so I'm always incredibly grateful to our custodial staff and our ground staff, et cetera. But if you see a custodian bus driver, Jose Hernandez, Steve Story, make sure you thank them, because last week was an incredibly difficult week for those of us who are associated with making those decisions. And I also want to acknowledge and say thank you to the community and teachers and staff who are incredibly patient with us as we work through those decisions. And they're very difficult. And I do have to tell you, I'm not going to lie, I've been watching my app, and it says that it's freezing something out there right now. So I promise we'll do our best to try to turn the weather patterns so we don't have more snow. But I'm looking at my app, and it's not looking hopeful to me. So stay tuned in the morning. Yeah.
You're not making any announcements tonight?
Not right this second, I'm not. But,
all right.
But I can't, might.
Okay, so that concludes our regular part of our meeting today. We will recess into executive session, so thank you for coming. And if you want us, how long are we going to?
It'll be under 4231-10-1G personnel. We're expecting it to take about 45 minutes.
So if you want to be here when we adjourn, stick around, 45 minutes.